Mr. Speaker, 2/3 of Canadians want to see COVID restrictions and mandates lifted. We have amongst the highest vaccination rate in the world, but Canadians are still living under restrictions that many other less vaccinated countries have lifted. Canadians want a plan for ending restrictions, and they are incredibly disappointed that the NDP and the Liberals blocked our Conservative motion asking for one. So, Mr. Speaker, if 32% of the vote is good enough for the Liberals to form government, why isn't 90% good enough to lift mandates?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, for 2 years, Canadians have been there for each other, and all of us together, we've followed the science. We've made sure that people get vaccinated. We've made sure that people have access to rapid tests. And every step of the way, we will be ensuring that we're doing exactly what's necessary, both to keep people safe from COVID, but also to get back to the things we love as quickly as possible. I was pleased to see this week the lifting of a number of restrictions around international travel. We're going to continue to monitor carefully and ensure that we follow the science as we keep Canadians safe.
The Honourable Member for Carlton Trail Eagle Creek.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The only thing this Prime Minister has made sure of is that he has politicized this pandemic and divided Canadians at a time when we should be working together, when we should be supporting one another. His lack of leadership has divided, stigmatized, and traumatized Canadians. Provincial premiers are leading the way, giving hope, confidence, and rebuilding trust in leadership. When will this Prime Minister follow their lead?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the 90% vaccination rate in Canada shows that Canadians have actually never been more united. The stories we saw throughout this pandemic of people being there for their neighbours, people there to support frontline workers, people there to support their communities, demonstrates the ability to which Canadians have stepped up to be there for each other. Yes, there have been people who've been harassing and intimidating frontline workers. Yes, there are people involved in illegal blockades, but the vast majority of Canadians continue to stand alongside each other and support each other, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Lakeland.
Speaker, 2/3 of Canadians are united because they want an end to mandates and lockdowns. But this Prime Minister said they're, quote, racist, misogynist, a fringe, who, quote, take up space, and he said shouldn't be tolerated. Security experts say the Emergencies Act is a, quote, absolutely unprecedented excessive overreach, and half the provinces oppose it. But this PM's pattern is failure and top-down division. He's gone from name-calling to nukes. Isn't this really about the Prime Minister taking a sledgehammer to Canadians that he thinks are unacceptable?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I believe the member opposite misspoke. I think it's actually 100% of Canadians who are tired of this COVID pandemic, who are tired of having to be restricted, of having to be impacted by this pandemic around the country and around the globe. We all want to get through it. However, the way to get through it is by following science, by keeping each other safe, by being there for each other. The way through this pandemic isn't to engage in illegal blockades that are harming their fellow Canadians.
L'honorable député de Chicoutimi-Le-Fjord.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday, the government of Quebec announced the end of the vaccine passport and presented a detailed plan for reopening with clear objectives. How is it that the federal government can't do the same thing? Even the member for Poilievre criticized his own party and recommended raising restrictions. The Prime Minister is using the pandemic for partisan and electoral purposes to save his job. When is he going to withdraw all of the country's public health measures? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, the member full well knows that the public health measures are applied for the most part by the provinces. At the border, the federal government is responsible for them, and I'm pleased to be able to highlight that for a few days now, we've announced a change in our posture at the border, and we're going to make it easier for vaccinated Canadians to travel abroad. That's a good thing for Canadians. We'll continue to follow the science, to raise restrictions, because that's what Canadians want, and it's what we all need.
Député de Belleuil-Chambly.